Good morning, world. This is Joseph Skoda, past District 33 director, living on the central coast of California at the moment. And we have this series called Meet Our District 33 Family. So every week or every now and then, I come into some interesting people. Some I know really well, and others I don't, but I'm getting to know them more as you are. And it's been a privilege and a pleasure to introduce new people to our family, to the rest of the district, and the rest of the world. Now, my guest today, I happen to know well. I've actually had lunch with her in her hometown and seen her at a lot of conferences and conventions over the past. And she's a member of a couple of my clubs. So please help me give a warm welcome to Twila Stout. Hi, Twila.
Hi, Joseph.
It's good. I'm so grateful that you're able to join us this morning, which is okay because you and I belong to the same morning club called South County Presenters in Division D at 7 a.m. on Tuesday. So early is not bad for either one of us, and I appreciate that. But tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you live in California, and where are you from originally?
I live in the best place to live in California. I live in the Central Valley. I'm 2 hours from everywhere. I live 2 hours from San Francisco, 2 hours from Yosemite, 2 hours from Santa Cruz, 2 hours from the Gold Country. And if I want some desert, I can even find that too. So I have mountains and oceans, and I can go up to the mountains in the morning and ski. And by lunchtime, I can come down and change clothes and go to the coast and have seafood for dinner. So I live in the Central Valley of California, where today it's a little over 100 degrees. So it's a warm Central Valley today.
Well, that's pretty good. You're still about 3.5 hours, 4 hours away from me, the long
Yeah.
distance. Are you originally from California?
No, I was born in Rosebud, Arkansas.
Arkansas.
I sure did. And then I went over to Alabama for the first year of my life. And then when I was 5, my pappy brought me out here to California.
California.
He came to win the war, and we ended
Uh,
up on a turkey ranch.
it's funny how life throws us a curveball every now and then.
Yes.
So I know you're a widow. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe your family life or even what you did as a profession?
Well, I moved around a lot. My dad had me in 13 schools in the first 8 grades, and I ended
Wow.
up in the 8th grade in Merced, California, all within about 30 miles of here. We didn't go drastically far away. But I went to school in Merced in high school, and I met George Stout. And I met him at my friend's birthday party. And the first time I met him, I thought he was a wolf and I wanted nothing to do with him. And about a year later, I got desperate for a date, and my friend suggested George. And I thought, nah, I don't want George. And about 6 months later, we were married. I So that's how I met my husband. He was a local boy, but he was stationed at Castle Air Force Base. So he spent his entire Air Force career 6 miles from his mother's home. And then after we got out of the Air Force, he went into business with his father, and we had a construction company, and we built roads and bridges and dams. And if you ever drive through Merced on Highway 99, we built the freeway section through Merced. So you were driving on one of our projects when you go through Merced on Highway 99.
Wow.
We
I've
had two
driven that
kids.
many times. Yeah.
We have a daughter and a son, and my son passed away about 5 years ago. And then my daughter took off to Iowa, to Carroll, Iowa. So she's about 2 days and 2 nights by Amtrak away from me.
That's right. You go there often, don't you? At least
Yeah,
a
I
couple
try to
times a
get
year.
back at least once or twice a year. Yeah.
Mhm.
A couple of grandkids. One of them is down closer to you in Moore Park, California. The other
Okay.
grandson is in Seattle, Washington. And then I have two step grandchildren, one in San Antonio, Texas, and one in Iowa, where my daughter is. So I have four grandchildren, four great grandchildren, and seven great grandchildren. So I have a whole bunch of those kids running around again.
I'm sure you keep tabs on them. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been with Postmasters? I know you've been a member a couple of years by now.
Yeah, it's a couple of years. I celebrated my 30th year July 1st. So 30
Wow.
years. And after 6 months after I joined, my boss told me I didn't have to go anymore because it was my boss that suggested Toastmasters. In fact, he suggested it, and I told him I was too busy to join another club. And then he suggested again. I told him I was too busy to join another club. And the third time he suggested it, I realized it's not a suggestion. This man is telling me to join Toastmasters. And I'm not shy. I can talk to anybody. I love to talk to people. I can talk to more than one person. I can talk to 10 or 20,000 even, but he wanted me to join Toastmasters. Oh, well, I will. And I found out why he wanted me to join Toastmasters. He wanted me to join to learn to shut up. Maybe that's why I'm still in here 30 years later, trying to learn to shut up because I can still talk to strangers and talk in front of audiences. And I just have to remember to use my inner clock and turn it off on time.
You're a librarian, is that right?
Yeah, I was a local bookie.
Local
And I
bookie?
started in the library when I was 14 years old as a little girl that put the books away.
Yeah.
Then I took a time out and got married and had the kids. Then I came back in when I was about 34 years old, went to work at the library, and I retired officially completely last year. I took a little session out to work in private industry and then went back working as a substitute for a few more years, not only at the main library and it's all of its branches, but also in the law library. I was in the law library for about 3 years, substituting there. So yeah, I had a long career with the books.
You are a bookie. You are
Yeah.
a bookie. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you also do some dog sitting or house sitting or something like that?
I sort of fell into a second career, or maybe a third or a fourth or a fifth. I've had several careers, but
Sure.
this one that I'm involved with now is a friend asked me to take care of their dogs while they went on vacation. So I did. I like dogs. And then her neighbor heard about it and said, well, could come over and take care of my cats? So I went over and took care of the cats. And then I've had dogs and cats. But I don't do snakes and bees. I absolutely put my foot down. I will not sit for snakes and bees. So it developed into a little business, and now I'm booked almost every month of the year with somebody. They get home from their vacation and they book me for the next year. So right now, in fact, this is not my house. I'm at another house across town, and I have two little dogs here, and one of them is sort of a puppy. I'm picking up a lot of things after that one. I found the shoe out in the backyard a few minutes ago.
Hope it's not yours.
No, it was the owner's.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I know you travel doing a lot of those kinds of things. So, how do you even find time to be in Toastmasters? How do you find time to be on a meeting?
Well, like any household, you have chores at certain hours and then you have free time. And I can't just sit around in somebody else's house because they don't want me cleaning their closets or, doing their personal chores. So I can pick up a Zoom meeting somewhere and just enjoy myself. It keeps me from going out and accosting strangers on the street.
Love that. Now, are you using your phone or a tablet right now?
I'm using my phone. I have a problem with their Wi-Fi in this house. This side of town doesn't get real good reception, so I'm using my phone today.
Sure, sure. And that's a big challenge. So how did you find the transition from meeting in person to virtual? Was that a hard one for you?
No, no. Uh, I started Zooming when I was at my daughter's house and we were shut down with COVID. Couldn't go out and visit, do anything that we usually did when I was there. So I sat in the basement in the middle of my bed barefoot. I think the first 6 or 8 months of Zooming, I was barefoot every single time I was on Zoom. But I found a lady from Canada who wanted to travel around the world and meet people. So Jen and I from Thunder Bay, Canada became Zoom buddies. And then I came across a gal in Singapore. Actually met her in Saudi Arabia, but she was from Singapore. And I met Eliza from Singapore. And then through Janet, I met Dick in England. So I've
Hmm.
I found that these clubs all over the world is just really a whole new travel adventure. So I was in
Was
the
it?
Ukraine at 2 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. So that was an interesting meeting too.
I'll bet. I hear a lot of them are still like meeting in basements or Some are
Yeah,
real
bomb
quiet, and
shelters. Bomb
bomb
shelters.
shelters. Sure, that's a scary time. And I've been to Dex meeting out there in England. And I remember the last time I went, there was a 94-year-old lady in
Yes,
the
yes.
club, if I'm not mistaken.
She's their president.
94. Wow,
Yeah.
and she's just a little go-getter, always
Yes, she
doing
is.
something. Hmm. So that's exciting. I know a lot of the same people. I know Janet real well, of course, Eliza. So I'm seeing you kind of visit on a routine basis.
Oh, yeah. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I found all these young gentlemen. The club was almost all men, young men in Saudi Arabia. And Eliza popped in there. They call her the princess. And then a young lady by the name of Lotta from New York came popping in. And pretty soon we had a young woman from India. And the next thing those young men knew, the women had invaded and we were there. And Lotta is about having fun. She believes that every meeting should be fun. And Ralph Smedley said that you learn best when you're having fun. So Lotta is the ambassador of fun for the world. She's traveling all over now, spreading her gospel of fun. But she had me doing belly dancing in Saudi Arabia, and I won that contest.
Remember that. I remember that. And
A
a lot of the unicorn.
lot of the unicorn, yes, indeed.
We'll have to have some kind of passion for something like that. Now, how long have you actually been a distinguished Toastmaster?
Probably about 20 years. It took me about 10 years to discover the whole outside world. I joined in sunrise at 6:30 a.m. on Friday morning, and that was a nice little group of people, and they were having
Sure.
fun. And so I decided to stay with them after the 6 months the boss gave me to belong. And the next thing I knew, I was the president of the club. And
It
then I
happens.
was doing a few other things like entering a contest and having no idea how that went. Then I found out that there were some other clubs in town, and I joined a second club. And then that member who introduced me to that club joined my club, so we were building up the membership at our clubs. Then there was a third club that I became a charter member of, and they met in Houston in person. And I drive once a month up to Houston to the meeting up there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I knew, I was in a fourth club. And then I was still driving from place to place for all these in-person meetings. And, they claim that Toastmasters is about not only speaking in front of large groups, which I'm not afraid to do, but
Sure.
it's about leadership. And I didn't want to be a leader. I just happened to open my mouth all the time, and then people put me in charge of that committee. So I would find out I was a leader of something, and I look around and I'd have a parade behind me, and I really hadn't planned on that. So leadership and communication were really not why I joined. I wanted to be an invisible leader. I found out finally that's the kind of leader I am. I'm the invisible leader, and I discovered that in Turlock. I went up to visit a club up there at the college in Turlock, Cal State Stanislaus, and their speaker didn't show up. So I've always got something I can say. I raised my hand and said, I'll give a speech.
Sure.
And I got up, and my style is slightly on the corny, funny, humorous side. No matter what I talk about, there's always something funny I think of while I'm talking. And
Sure.
there was a guest in the back of the room, and she sat there and listened to me talk. And I went home, and about 4 or 5 years later, she was entered in a humorous contest. She had joined the club that day because she wanted to be like me. And that's being an invisible leader. When you say something that causes another person to take action on something you say, you have become an invisible leader. And so beware what you say, Joseph. You may be leading someone off onto a strange path that they had no intention of taking by something you said gave them that inclination. So I am the invisible leader.
Invisible leader. That's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that because, for instance, I speak a lot too, of course, and I enjoy it. And competition, I love competition, but I've always been weak in contests. I never wanted to do it or be involved, but I always seem to get involved on a dare. I dare you to, I challenge you to, or like, okay, give it a try. I made the district on a couple different speeches in the past. Are you still involved, actively involved in competing? Why do you do it?
No,
And what do you get out of it? No.
I
Well,
don't, I don't want to compete. I just sort of end up getting the role. I get voluntold, and I end up because no one else will do it.
mhm.
They don't take the dare, and so I end up doing it. But I'm not the competitive type. I just go along and do what I enjoy doing, and it's not to win something. I hope when I give a speech in a contest that I do it better than I did the last time I did it. And
I'm
very
still,
seldom do I do serious speeches. My speeches have always mostly been the humorous ones. I tell a funny story about something in my life, and people say, "Oh, that's great for a contest," but it was my true story out of my own life. And people
that,
look at my life and they think, "How could that be funny?" Well, the way I look at it, it becomes funny. I mean, I can have an auto accident, and next thing you know, it's in a humorous speech when that I give at the club.
I know I'm very off the ball too. I'll be the joke master. I'll tell a story. I'll do a poem. You always, I'll do that. I'll do that. You don't think you have to think about it too much. You're hilarious. But I know obviously you always, if you're not competing, you'll be a judge or a timer or doing something
Yeah,
else to support it. So what do you think
yeah.
other people get out of competing? Or why do people compete in the contest anyways?
They're just competitive people, people that enjoy sports. There's always a competition. That's why they play sports, the game, the winning. And I'm not into the winning, but some people are. And I keep saying, enter the contest. It's not about winning. It's about improving yourself, doing better the next time than you did the last time. So that's the win there, is challenging yourself, not somebody else. A
That's
lot of
true.
runners, I think a lot of runners feel that they're not running against the other person, they're running against their own personal best.
Sure, always trying to become just a little bit better. True, and sometimes we're our own worst critic or enemy
Yeah, oh
at the
yeah,
same
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Now,
I
what
get through
about
speaking, I think, why
leadership?
did I say that?
Yeah, I know. Now, what about leadership? You're back into leadership, correct?
Well, they came out with a new book. We had those
Yeah,
manuals. The first 10 speeches, or the first were the perfect speech. You had the gestures and the organization and the voice tone and the 10 elements of a perfect speech. And that was your competent communicator book. So I
sure.
went through that. And then they came out this second manual called Competent Leadership. And you had to be a lead a meeting, and you had to be the Toastmaster, you had to be the evaluator, and then you had to be an officer of the club.
Yep,
Well, I did that. And then all of a sudden, someone said, "Well, Twila, you need to be an area director." So I shadowed the area director that year and became the
nice.
area director the next year. And then I became the division director. And then I became the district secretary. I
Wow.
skipped over that district office deal and just went from division, which was the second level up, or third from club to area to division. And then
Sure, sure.
I skipped being a district officer and went to secretary rather than one of the directors. Then they got through with me there and they gave me the role of contest chair. I could run the
Mm,
contest. Well,
mm.
then I had to find the contestants and, you know, pleading with this club and that club. Oh, please enter somebody. You have to have a representation. And then the next time they said, well, you should be the conference chair and run the
Mm.
conference. And then you have to deal with the big three, the top three officers of the district, and you find a hotel and you find people to do this and you find a committee to do that. And then pretty soon you've got to get 50 or 60 or 70 people involved in running this conference. And I didn't want to lead people. I just wanted to follow around having a good time. But here I am leading this parade. So I did that. Then after that, they said, "Oh, Twilight, you can be the chief judge." Well, then you go around, "Oh, I need a judge from here because you can't judge because you already know the contestant." And it's a whole new world being the chief judge. And so I repeated those chairmanships 2 or 3 times here and there and at all the different levels. I became a leader without even intending to do so. I went to Modesto to the conference there, got out of my car, and I'm juggling stuff to take in. And this lady came running over to help me. And I said, "Well, I'm Twila Stout." She says, "You're Twila Stout, the legendary Twila Stout." What happened here? But at least I don't have the legend that Wendy Farrell left behind.
Yeah, what's that?
Wendy would invite you to the parking lot. Wendy was
Uh-oh.
about 4'10" and 3-inch spiked heels. And if you got invited to go to the parking lot with Wendy, you were in trouble because Wendy had seen something that you needed to correct and grow out of, something that you needed to not do anymore. And she wouldn't mention it in front of anybody else. She'd just invite you to take a stroll out to the parking lot where she was going to have her cigarette. And Wendy would then tell you that you need to change your ways. So at least people don't run when they see me coming now. They know that I'm just going to ask them to do something or ask them to be voluntold, maybe, but I'm not taking them to the parking lot.
Well, you're short but spunky at the same time. That's for sure. So, what clubs do you represent, and which division are you in right now?
Well, I'm in Division F, and I
Uh,
am the area director for F1 now this year. So I have
woohoo!
mostly the clubs around Merced.
Mhm.
And then I belong to 12 clubs, and I'm an officer in 6 of them. So other than that, I don't have much to do with my days. People
That's
think that
one's knowledge.
Toastmasters is that hour long that you spend, or that hour and a half or 2 hours is Toastmasters, and it isn't, because I'm looking at my desk here and there's a pile for this club and a pile for that club, and there's 3 speeches I'm working on bones of, and then there's the poems and the quotations and the educational moments. I'm all lining all those up. So I'm not bored. Never, never, ever bored.
Great. A lot of us can learn from you for sure. I'm not bored either. I love because every club's a little unique. You get something different, and different friendships that you make. And who
Oh,
knows,
yeah.
you might get a job babysitting dogs and cat.
Well, yesterday I came
Goldfish.
out of the library. I was walking out of the library, and this young man came toward me and he says, "I know you. You're Twila Stout." And I didn't know him. And he says, "You're in Toastmasters." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he says, "Well, I'm Keith." Well, evidently we have a new member named Keith, and he recognized me from my Zoom picture and asked me to be his mentor. So I am now mentoring a new member in one of my clubs because he recognized me in front of the library.
There's no greater privilege or honor than someone asking you to mentor them. That
Yes.
changed my whole mindset around like, really? Me? When they find
Yeah.
something in you that they resonate with, and just wow, what a feeling! What a feeling!
Well, I
All
found
right.
some great mentors when I joined Toastmasters. I had Paul Smith, Distinguished Toastmaster Paul Smith,
I
who's a
know, Paul.
past District 33 director. And then there was Wayne Choate, who was a
Oh yeah.
Southern gentleman from Tennessee, and you learn a lot
Yes,
from Wayne.
I love Wayne.
Yeah.
Wayne, yeah, him and his wife were both district directors.
Yes, they
Right.
were. Yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, that's great.
they met in Toastmasters. Yes.
Really? So it's
Yes.
almost
Yeah.
a matchmaking thing going on sometimes.
Yeah, they met in Toastmasters, and then there was Kay Collis and her husband met in Toastmasters, and I call it was the Bachelors and Bachelorettes in Las Vegas where they met.
You know, it's Kay's birthday today, actually.
Yeah, she had a wonderful message
Yeah.
on Facebook, so I sent her my greetings.
Yep, I know him too. And that was an interesting time when we were part of Las Vegas. Obviously, we had a much bigger territory back then, and
Yeah,
going back and forth between Nevada and California was so much fun. And we still have those relationships, even though we're
yes,
no longer part of that. That's kind of what I love about this is you develop strong bonds with people all over the
yes.
world. Well, any
Yeah,
words of
Tuesday.
wisdom for us? Any last words of wisdom for us?
Well, I'm 30 years in Toastmasters, still trying to learn to shut up, trying to learn to listen. But I think that my favorite quote is by the first female international president, that was Helen
Oh,
Blanchard. And she said, "If you get all that you can get out of Toastmasters, you will never get out of Toastmasters." And I'm still here trying to get all that I can get out of Toastmasters. And I'll probably be here for another 20 years at least, but then I'll be 100. So then I probably would have an excuse to quit by then.
maybe we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I remember a couple years ago, I think he's a Filipino. He got his DTM, and if I'm not mistaken, it was like 96 or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, wow. Because he
There
was
was a
just something to do.
district director in Connecticut, I think it was, who was 100 when he was a district director. When I
Wow.
first went in, yeah.
Wow. Well, who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
I only have 13 years there, or 10. Yeah, 13. I have a long way to go to catch up with you. But I want to thank you, and our district wants to thank you, the family, and I know you'll be a member of this family, like you said, at least another 20 years,
Yeah.
or maybe hopefully a little bit longer. Well, with that being said, we appreciate you, Twila, and we look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
you in virtual land, if not in
Yes.
Division F, in person in Merced. All
Nice
right. Well,
speaking
thank
with you,
you.
Joseph. See you
And thank
soon.
all of you. All right. That was fun.